The Apache beauty said, "Don't you recognize me, cowboy? I'm your childhood love." Years had passed since he had left for the rodeo circuit, chasing the life of a cowboy, performing in arenas, and living a life filled with travel and adventure. Now, at 28, he returned with a different purpose. The family ranch needed him, and deep down he hoped that returning home might bring some peace to his restless heart. The town hadn't changed much. The same old saloon stood at the corner of Main Street, its swinging doors creaking in the wind. The general store had a fresh coat of paint, and the bakery still smelled of sweet bread and cinnamon every morning. Jake smiled to himself. It felt strange and comforting at the same time. He dismounted his horse, tied the reins to the post outside the stables, and took a deep breath. It was good to be back. Jake walked through the market square, observing the familiar faces of townsfolk who recognized him immediately. Some waved, others nodded politely. The town had a slow rhythm, a simple pace that Jake had once loved, though his life had pulled him far from it. He wandered past the stalls, inspecting the fresh vegetables, the handcrafted tools, and the leather goods. It was a quiet morning, and the warm sunlight made the wooden stalls glow. As he moved through the crowd, something unusual caught his eye. At the far end of the market, near the fountain, stood a woman unlike anyone Jake had seen in years. Her presence was striking. She was dressed in traditional Apache attire, with intricate beadwork on her dress, her long, dark hair braided neatly down her back. There was a quiet strength about her, a calm but powerful aura that made the crowd seem to fade around her. Jake stopped walking, trying to understand why her face seemed so familiar. There was something in her eyes, in the curve of her smile, that tugged at a memory buried deep within him. The townsfolk seemed to notice his pause. A few curious glances were cast in their direction, whispers floated through the air. But Jake didn't care about the gossip. He was focused entirely on the woman before him. She was watching him now, her gaze steady and unafraid. Slowly, she began to approach him, and with each step, Jake felt his heart beat faster. He wanted to run, to turn away, yet he was rooted to the spot, unable to look anywhere but at her. When she was only a few feet away, she stopped. There was a moment of silence, a pause that felt endless. Then she spoke in a soft, clear voice that carried over the hum of the market. "Don't you recognize me, cowboy? I'm your childhood love." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He blinked as if the sunlight or the heat had made him see things incorrectly. Childhood love? The words hit him like a sudden gust of wind. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. His mind raced, trying to place her. And then slowly, memories began to surface. He remembered a little girl with laughter like music, someone who had chased him through the fields behind their houses, climbing trees and racing horses just as he did. She had a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, always ready with a joke or a daring idea. He remembered how she had dared him to cross the creek on a fallen log, how they had played hide-and-seek among the mesquite trees. Her name had been Alina. Yes, Alina. It had been so long since he had seen her. How had she grown into the woman standing in front of him, radiant and strong? "Alina," Jake finally managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. She smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that seemed to carry all the warmth of those long-ago days. "Yes, Jake, it's me." "You remember now, don't you?" Jake swallowed hard. The memories of their childhood adventures, the secret forts they had built, the stories they had shared under the stars, all of it came rushing back. For a moment he felt like a boy again, standing in the dusty fields, listening to the desert wind, sharing dreams with a friend who had understood him better than anyone else. Alina laughed softly, a sound that was familiar and comforting. "You look surprised." "I never thought I'd find you here after all these years." I don't know what to say," Jake admitted. "I mean, I never expected to see you again." "I know," Alina said, her eyes softening. "Life has a way of taking us down different paths. But here we are back where it all began." Jake couldn't help but notice how much she had changed. She had grown into a strong, independent woman, but there was still something unmistakably her. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the sparkle in her eyes when she laughed, the confident yet gentle way she carried herself. And yet beneath it all he sensed a vulnerability, a hint of the little girl who had once run through the fields with him, fearless and free. "I can't believe it's really you," Jake said, shaking his head slightly. "All these years I thought I'd never see you again." "I never forgot you," Alina said simply. "Not for a single day. I wondered what happened to you, where life took you, if you ever thought of me." Her words touched Jake in ways he didn't expect. He had thought of her, yes, but he had buried the memories under the weight of rodeos, travel, and life's responsibilities. Seeing her now, he realized how much he had missed, not just her, but the connection they had shared, the pure friendship, the laughter, and the understanding that had once existed between them. The crowd around them seemed to blur, fading into the background. For Jake, it was as if the years melted away, leaving only the two of them in that quiet, sunlit moment. He wanted to reach out to take her hand, but he hesitated. Time had changed them both. They were no longer children running through the fields. They had lives, responsibilities, and experiences that shaped who they had become. Yet beneath it all, something familiar, something enduring remained. Alina tilted her head slightly, studying him with those deep, knowing eyes. "You've changed," she said softly, almost as if she were speaking to a part of him he had forgotten. "But you're still the same Jake I knew, brave, kind, and stubborn as ever." Jake chuckled, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, I guess some things don't change." They walked together through the market, talking quietly as they moved. Alina told him about her life, about her work preserving Apache culture and her efforts to teach younger generations about their heritage. Jake listened, fascinated, and found himself drawn not just to her beauty, but to her strength, her wisdom, and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. As they spoke, Jake realized something important. Alina was not just a memory from his past. She was a person with dreams, struggles, and a life that had taken her on a journey as extraordinary as his own. And yet, despite the years and the distance, the connection between them felt alive, as if time had never truly separated them. By the time they reached the edge of the market, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the town. Jake felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wanted to ask her to stay, to not let this moment end, but he also knew that rushing things could spoil the fragile bridge they were beginning to rebuild. "Alina," he said finally, his voice steady but filled with emotion, I want to see you again. I want to know more about you, about your life, about everything." Alina smiled, a radiant smile that lit up her face. "I'd like that," she said simply. "I'd like that very much." As they parted for the moment, Jake felt a strange sense of hope. The past and present had collided in a way he hadn't expected, and for the first time in a long while, he felt that life had something wonderful in store for him. He mounted his horse slowly, glancing back at Alina one last time. Her figure stood tall and graceful against the backdrop of the town, a living reminder of the joy, innocence, and love he had once known. Riding back toward the ranch, Jake couldn't stop thinking about her. The encounter had awakened something deep inside him, a memory, a longing, and a possibility he hadn't dared to imagine. He knew that the story between him and Alina was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. The wind swept across the open plains as he rode, carrying with it the scent of the desert, the sound of the distant river, and the whisper of a promise. Childhood memories, once buried in the past, were now alive again, and Jake felt ready to explore where this unexpected reunion might lead. For the first time in many years, the cowboy felt the stirrings of excitement, anticipation, and even love. And in the quiet of the afternoon, under the endless blue sky, he knew that life had a way of bringing people back to where they belonged, sometimes when they least expected it. The next morning, Jake woke early. The sunrise painted the horizon in shades of gold and pink, and the cool morning air carried the faint scent of wild sage and dust. He couldn't stop thinking about Alina. The encounter at the market had stirred memories he thought were long gone, memories that made him smile and ache at the same time. After finishing his breakfast, he saddled his horse and rode slowly toward the outskirts of town. The old creek where he and Alina had spent countless afternoons as children ran nearby. He hadn't been back there in years, and a part of him felt nervous. What if Alina didn't remember? What if she had changed so much that the past he cherished no longer existed in her? When he arrived at the creek, he saw her waiting there. Alina stood barefoot on the soft sand, her dress flowing gently in the morning breeze. She smiled when she saw him approach, and for a moment, Jake felt as though he had stepped back in time. It was easy to imagine the two of them as children, running through the same fields, laughing and sharing secrets. "Good morning, cowboy," Alina said, her voice warm and light. "I thought I'd come here first. This place, it holds so many memories." Jake dismounted, brushing the dust from his jeans. "Yeah," he said softly. "It does. I can almost hear us laughing, can't you?" Alina nodded, her eyes distant as if she were seeing the past unfold before her. I remember the games we played, the little forts we built, and how we'd race across the fields pretending we were heroes in our own stories. Jake smiled, feeling a swell of nostalgia. And the creek, he added. Do you remember how you challenged me to cross on the fallen log? Alina laughed, the sound like music over the gentle rushing of the water. I thought you'd never make it. You were so careful, but you didn't want to lose to me, and then you almost fell in the water anyway. That I did, Jake said, shaking his head. But you laughed so hard I couldn't stay mad. You always had that way about you, making everything feel fun, even when I was nervous or scared. They sat together on the bank of the creek, letting the water rush past their feet. The conversation flowed easily, filled with shared laughter and gentle teasing. Jake learned that Alina had returned to the area after years of studying and working with local communities. She had dedicated herself to preserving Apache culture, teaching children about their history, language, and traditions. It's not always easy, Alina admitted, her voice quiet now. Some people don't understand or they don't care. But I want to make sure the stories of our people are remembered, and I wanted to find my way back here to the place where it all began for me. Jake listened, captivated by her passion and determination. He realized that the girl he had once known had grown into a woman of strength and purpose, someone who could stand in the world with confidence while remaining kind and gentle. It was inspiring, and Jake felt a mixture of admiration and something deeper, an affection he hadn't expected to feel again. Do you ever miss it? He asked quietly. The creek, the fields, the simple days of just being kids together? Alina nodded. Every day. Life can be so complicated, but those memories remind me of what really matters: friendship, love, and staying true to yourself. You never really forget the people who mattered in your childhood. And you, Jake, you mattered to me. Jake felt a lump in his throat. He had never known how much he had missed her until this moment. The words she spoke were simple, but they carried a weight that made his heart ache. He remembered the long days they had spent exploring the desert, collecting rocks, chasing lizards, and lying under the stars talking about dreams they barely understood. I think I understand now, Jake said softly. Why this feels so important. Why seeing you again, it's like a part of me that I thought was gone has come back. Alina reached out and touched his hand lightly. It's never gone, Jake. It's always been there, waiting. Maybe life takes us away, but it can also bring us back to where we belong. They spent hours at the creek, walking along the water, sharing stories of their lives and reminiscing about the past. Jake told her about his adventures on the rodeo circuit, the people he had met, the cities he had visited, and the challenges he had faced. Alina listened with interest, asking questions and laughing at the funny moments, and she shared her own experiences, explaining how her work with the Apache community had given her purpose and pride. As the sun climbed higher, they found a quiet spot under the shade of an old mesquite tree. Here, the conversation turned more personal. Alina spoke of the loneliness she had felt when her family moved away, the struggle to adapt to new schools, and the way she had held onto the memories of Jake and their childhood adventures. I always wondered, she admitted, if you remembered me at all. If I had been forgotten. Jake shook his head immediately. No, never. How could I forget you? You were everything. The person I wanted to be around, the friend I could count on, and maybe even more, though I didn't understand it as a kid. Alina smiled, a gentle blush coloring her cheeks. You were my first friend, Jake, and you were brave, kind, and funny. I never forgot that, even when life took us in different directions. For a long moment, they sat in silence, letting the wind carry their unspoken thoughts. It was a quiet understanding, a recognition that the bond they had shared as children had never really disappeared. It had waited patiently for this moment, for their paths to cross again. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice low and sincere. I don't want to lose this again. Whatever happens, I want to know you, really know you. Alina nodded, her eyes glistening. And I want the same, Jake. We've been given a second chance, and I don't want to waste it. The day passed quickly as they explored the outskirts of town, walking through fields where wildflowers grew in bright patches, climbing small hills to get a better view of the valley, and watching the river sparkle in the afternoon sun. They laughed at old jokes, teased each other gently, and shared the simple joys that had once made their childhood days so special. As the afternoon began to fade into evening, they returned to the creek, now quiet and calm. The sunlight reflected off the water, casting golden ripples across the sand. Jake looked at Alina and realized how much he had missed not just her presence, but the feeling of being understood completely. She was someone who had seen him as a child, someone who had known his heart, and now she was here again, offering a chance to rebuild that connection. "Alina," Jake said, "do you think maybe we can create new memories, not just remember the old ones, but make more together?" Alina smiled warmly. "I'd like that, Jake. I think we can." They stayed by the creek until the sun had set, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple. The air grew cooler, and the first stars began to twinkle above. They didn't speak much, simply enjoying each other's presence, the quiet rhythm of the water, and the comfort of being together. Finally, they stood and prepared to leave. Jake mounted his horse, and Alina followed on foot, her dress brushing the grass. They walked back toward town slowly, neither wanting the day to end, both feeling a quiet excitement for what was to come. As they reached the edge of town, Jake paused and turned to Alina. "I'm glad you came back. I don't think I realized how much I needed this, how much I needed you." Alina's eyes softened. "Sometimes life gives us a second chance, Jake. Maybe this time we won't let it slip away." With that, they went their separate ways for the night, but both carried a sense of hope and anticipation. The past had returned to them, but it was not a burden. It was a gift. A gift that could help them build something stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than either had imagined. As Jake lay in bed that night, he thought about Alina, about the childhood they had shared, and about the woman she had become. He realized that reconnecting with her was not just about the past. It was about understanding himself, the choices he had made, and the life he wanted to lead from now on. He drifted off to sleep with a smile on his face, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey. A journey not just of love, but of rediscovery, healing, and the chance to embrace what life had given them both. And somewhere he knew Alina was feeling the same way, her heart filled with the warmth of familiar friendship, the spark of something more, and the hope of new memories yet to come. The following days passed in a blur of activity for Jake and Alina. They spent almost every morning together, exploring the familiar landscapes of their childhood, yet seeing them with fresh eyes. Jake introduced Alina to the ranch, showing her the barns, the stables, and the fields where he had spent countless hours tending to horses and cattle. Alina listened intently, asking questions about ranch life and sharing her admiration for his hard work and dedication. "I can't believe how much you do on your own," Alina said one morning, brushing her fingers along the wooden railing of the barn. "You really are responsible for everything here," Jake shrugged modestly. "It's not just me. My family helped me learn, but yeah, I try to keep everything running smoothly. The ranch is like a living thing. You have to care for it every day or it won't survive." Alina smiled. "It reminds me of my work with the children. You have to nurture them, teach them, and guide them, or they drift away from what's important. I guess some things never change." Jake looked at her thoughtfully. "I never thought of it that way. You're right. It's the same with people, isn't it? You help them grow, and in turn, you grow yourself." Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter, insights, and gentle teasing. Jake felt a deep sense of comfort being with Alina. She had always been someone who understood him, someone who could see beyond his rough exterior to the person he truly was. And now, as adults, that understanding had only deepened. One afternoon, they rode horses across the open fields. The wind whipped through their hair, and the sun shone brightly overhead. For a while, they raced each other, laughing and shouting like they had when they were children. Alina's laughter was infectious, and Jake found himself grinning from ear to ear. "You're not as fast as you used to be," Alina teased as she pulled ahead. "Or maybe you're just letting me win." Jake laughed. "I think you've just gotten better. I can't compete with you anymore." Alina slowed her horse and looked over her shoulder at him. "You don't have to compete, Jake. It's not about winning. It's about enjoying the ride together." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He realized that this was what he had missed for so many years, the simple joy of being with someone who truly mattered, someone who could make life feel lighter and brighter. As the days went on, Jake learned more about Alina's work. She was not only preserving Apache traditions, but also teaching children about their history, their language, and their connection to the land. She had organized storytelling sessions, craft workshops, and small community events. Her dedication impressed Jake deeply. "You really care about this," he said one evening as they watched the sun set over the hills. "It's amazing how much effort you put into helping people remember who they are." Alina nodded. It's important. We all need to know where we come from. The stories, the traditions, they keep us grounded, and I want the children to feel proud of who they are. That way they'll grow strong and confident. Jake admired her for this, but he also felt a little envious. He had spent so many years traveling, performing, and chasing success in ways that felt empty compared to the purpose Alina had found. Her life had meaning, and now he wondered what his life had been missing. One evening, they sat by the campfire near the ranch, the flames flickering and casting dancing shadows on their faces. Jake roasted a few marshmallows while Alina told him stories of her childhood after moving away from the town, of the new friends she had made, and the challenges she had faced growing up far from the familiar fields and creeks of her youth. I always felt a little lost, she said softly, poking the fire with a stick. I had to find my way, make new memories, and learn who I was apart from the past. But the memories of you, Jake, they were always with me. They reminded me of the person I wanted to be, the kind of life I hoped to live. Jake listened quietly, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had never realized how much influence their childhood friendship had on her. It was humbling, and it made him appreciate their bond even more. You've always been brave, he said finally. Even as a child, you faced things I wouldn't have dared, and you never gave up on what mattered to you. Alina smiled, her eyes reflecting the firelight. And you, Jake, always made me feel safe. You were my friend, my partner in adventure. I knew that no matter what happened, I could count on you. There was a quiet moment of understanding between them. Neither spoke, but their hearts communicated in ways words never could. It was a connection that had survived time and distance, growing stronger despite the years apart. The next day, they ventured to the hills that overlooked the town. The view was breathtaking, with the valley stretching out below and the river glinting like a ribbon of silver in the sunlight. They climbed slowly, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company without the pressure of expectation. Jake paused at the top of a hill, looking out over the landscape. You know, Alina, he said, I think I've been so focused on doing things, achieving things, I forgot what it means to just live, to appreciate the simple moments like this one. Alina nodded. Life has a way of teaching us those lessons when we least expect it. Sometimes it takes losing something or someone to remember what's really important. Jake turned to her, his gaze softening. I don't want to lose this, not again. Alina's eyes shimmered with emotion. And you won't, Jake. We found each other again, and that's what matters. As the days turned into weeks, Jake and Alina grew closer. They shared meals at the local diner, helped neighbors with chores, and spent quiet evenings watching the stars. Jake introduced Alina to some of his old cowboy friends, who were initially surprised but quickly accepted her warmth and intelligence. One afternoon, as they were mending fences together, Alina paused and looked at Jake thoughtfully. Do you ever think about the future? She asked. About what life might look like if we stayed in each other's lives this time? Jake thought for a moment, pulling a nail from the wooden post. I do. I think about it a lot. And I hope that whatever comes, we face it together. I don't want to repeat the past, but I do want to build something new, something lasting. Alina smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I feel the same. We've been given another chance, Jake. It's up to us to make the most of it. But even as their bond deepened, challenges began to appear. Some townsfolk whispered about their closeness, suspicious of the sudden reunion. Others doubted that a childhood friendship could turn into something real between adults. Jake and Alina tried to ignore the gossip, focusing instead on their shared moments and the connection that had survived time. One day, while working at the ranch, a small crisis arose. A young horse had gotten loose, running toward the road. Jake and Alina chased after it, working together seamlessly to corral the frightened animal. It was a tense moment, filled with adrenaline, but also a reminder of how well they could work as a team. See, Jake said afterward, catching his breath. We make a good team. Just like old times. Alina laughed, her cheeks flushed. Yes, but this time I hope the adventures are a little less chaotic. Through every shared task, every conversation, and every moment of laughter or worry, Jake and Alina realized that their connection was deeper than simple nostalgia. It was built on trust, respect, shared values, and an understanding that had been forged over years of friendship and memories. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the ranch house watching the sunset, Jake turned to Alina with a thoughtful expression. I never realized how much I needed this, Life was full of excitement on the road, but it felt empty without someone who truly knew me. Alina reached for his hand, holding it gently. We were lucky to find each other again. Maybe life gave us the first part to learn and grow, and now it's giving us the chance to get it right. Jake smiled, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. I like that. I like that very much. As darkness fell, the stars appeared one by one, filling the sky with a blanket of light. Jake and Alina sat together quietly, letting the universe stretch above them, feeling both the weight of the past and the promise of the future. They didn't need to speak. The bond they had, the memories they shared, and the trust they had rebuilt said more than words ever could. For the first time in a long time, Jake felt truly at home, not just in the town or on the ranch, but with Alina. And for Alina, the feeling was mutual. She had returned to a place of memories and found not only her past, but the possibility of a new life filled with love, companionship, and shared purpose. It was clear to both of them that the journey ahead would not be without challenges. But they had learned that together they could face anything. The connection they had, forged in childhood and renewed in adulthood, was strong enough to endure whispers, doubts, and even mistakes. What mattered most was that they had each other, and that was enough. As they turned in for the night, Jake and Alina both carried a quiet excitement in their hearts. Life had brought them back together, and now it was up to them to explore this second chance, to build new memories, and to nurture the bond that had survived the test of time. And as they drifted into sleep, both felt a sense of hope, anticipation, and the comfort of knowing that the most important journey of all, the journey of the heart, was only beginning. The peaceful rhythm of life at the ranch and in the town did not last forever. One afternoon, Jake was working with the horses when a distant cry reached him. A fire had broken out in the dry hills beyond the town. The wind was strong and the flames were spreading fast. Smoke filled the air, turning the sky a dull orange. Panic rippled through the community as townspeople scrambled to protect their homes, livestock, and families. Jake immediately thought of Alina. She had gone out to the community center that morning, helping children with a workshop about Apache culture and local history. He raced toward her on horseback, urging his horse faster, the dust from the trail kicking up behind him. His heart pounded with fear, not just for the town, but for Alina. When he arrived, he saw her standing near the children, guiding them to safety with calm authority. Despite the smoke and chaos, Alina remained steady, her voice clear and reassuring. Jake's chest swelled with pride. She had always been strong, and now that strength shone brighter than ever. "Alina," he called out, spurring his horse closer. She turned, relief washing over her face when she saw him. "Jake," she shouted back, "we have to get the children and everyone else to safety." Without hesitation, Jake jumped off his horse and joined her. Together, they helped lead the children through the dust and smoke, directing them toward the river where the air was clearer and safer. Jake marveled at how Alina handled the situation. She remained composed, encouraging frightened children, calming their parents, and coordinating with other townsfolk. He realized that the girl he had known as a child had grown into someone remarkable, capable of facing danger with courage and clarity. Once the children were safe, Jake and Alina turned to deal with the fire itself. The wind was pushing the flames dangerously close to the ranch, and several nearby homes were at risk. The townsfolk had formed a bucket brigade, trying to slow the spread, but it was clear they needed more help. Jake organized a plan, giving instructions and rallying volunteers. Alina worked alongside him, her knowledge of the land helping them find natural fire breaks and safe paths. The work was exhausting. Heat, smoke, and fear weighed heavily on everyone, but Jake felt a renewed determination. He was no longer just thinking about saving the ranch or his family's property. He was fighting to protect the people he cared about, and most of all, Alina. Every time he glanced at her, he saw someone who had never wavered, someone whose bravery and skill inspired him to keep going. Hours passed. The fire raged, but together the townspeople, guided by Jake and Alina, began to gain control. They managed to divert the flames away from homes and livestock, creating safe zones and extinguishing smaller fires along the way. Sweat ran down Jake's face. His clothes were dirty and scorched, but he felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond physical exhaustion. During a brief moment of respite, Jake and Alina sat on a rock at the edge of a hill, catching their breath. The smoke swirled around them, and the orange glow of the flames reflected in their tired eyes. "You were amazing," Jake said, his voice filled with admiration. I don't know what I would have done without you. Alina shook her head, brushing soot from her hair. We did it together, Jake. You organized everyone so well, and you stayed calm when things got dangerous. I knew I could rely on you. Jake looked at her, realizing something he hadn't fully acknowledged until that moment. He had always admired her strength, but now he understood that it was more than admiration. It was love. Seeing her in action, seeing her courage and compassion made his feelings undeniable. Alina, sensing his gaze, smiled softly. You're quiet. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I've never stopped caring about you, Jake admitted. I think I've loved you for longer than I realized. Seeing you here, seeing how brave and amazing you are, it just made me sure. Alina's eyes glistened in the fading light. Jake, I feel the same. I never stopped caring even when we were apart. And today, seeing you, helping everyone, it reminded me why I always held on to the memory of us. They shared a quiet moment, the chaos around them temporarily forgotten. It was as if the world had paused, leaving only the two of them amidst the smoke and the fading flames. Their hearts connected in a way that words could barely express, a bond forged in childhood, tested by time and strengthened by the present. But the crisis was far from over. As night fell, the fire reignited in patches, threatening the outer edges of the town. Jake and Alina worked tirelessly alongside the volunteers, creating new fire breaks, moving animals to safety, and ensuring everyone remained calm. The townspeople looked to them for guidance, and they rose to the challenge, their teamwork flawless and seamless. During a brief pause, Jake noticed Alina looking toward the hills where the flames were highest. Her face was determined, but there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. The fire is stronger than I thought, she said. We need to make sure it doesn't reach the old storage barn near the creek. If that goes up, the smoke could trap everyone. Jake nodded. We'll handle it. We have to. Let's get the supplies and head there. They ran through the darkness, carrying buckets of water and tools, guiding volunteers who were exhausted but determined to help. The fire roared, crackling and hissing, but Jake and Alina stayed focused. Their coordination was flawless. They moved together, communicated without hesitation, and motivated those around them to keep going. At one point, a volunteer stumbled near the flames, and Jake rushed to steady them. Alina quickly assessed the situation and directed others to form a protective line, keeping the volunteer safe. The fire was unpredictable, but their quick thinking and leadership kept the danger under control. Hours passed like this, until finally, with the combined effort of the townspeople and Jake and Alina at the forefront, the fire was contained. Exhausted but triumphant, they watched as the remaining flames died down, leaving behind scorched earth but no loss of life or major property damage. Jake collapsed onto a nearby log, breathing heavily, his clothes covered in soot. Alina sat beside him, her hair disheveled but her eyes shining with satisfaction. We did it, Jake said finally, a tired smile on his face. Alina nodded, leaning back and looking up at the stars that were beginning to appear. We did, together. For the first time that day, they allowed themselves to relax completely. The adrenaline faded, leaving a sense of relief and quiet joy. Jake reached for Alina's hand, and she took it without hesitation. You know, Jake said softly, today made me realize something important. Life is unpredictable, danger can come at any moment, but what matters most is the people you care about, and you're the person I care about most. Alina turned to him, her eyes reflecting the firelight and the starlight above. Jake, I feel the same. And I think this experience, this challenge, has shown us how strong we are together. We can face anything if we do it side by side. They sat quietly for a while longer, holding hands and watching the smoke rise in the distance. The fire had tested them, but it had also revealed something even more important: the depth of their connection, the trust they had in each other, and the love that had quietly grown over the years. As they walked back toward the ranch, their hands still intertwined, Jake felt a sense of certainty he had never experienced before. Alina had been part of his past, a memory he had cherished, but now she was part of his present and he hoped his future. The fire had reminded him that life was fragile, and moments like these, moments of courage, trust, and love, were precious beyond measure. When they reached the ranch house, they were greeted by grateful neighbors and friends, all offering thanks and praise. Jake and Alina humbly accepted the gratitude, but their minds were focused on each other. They had faced a crisis together and emerged stronger, their bond deeper than ever before. That night, as they sat on the porch looking at the quiet hills, Jake spoke softly. Alina, I know the future won't always be easy. Life will bring challenges, but I want to face them with you. I don't want to let anything come between us again. Alina leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't want that either, Jake. We've been given a second chance. I intend to make the most of it with you. The stars twinkled above, and the air was cool and calm. The fire had tested their courage, patience, and strength, but it had also revealed the power of their connection. Together, they had faced danger, protected others, and discovered the depth of their love. As they finally went inside the ranch house, both Jake and Alina felt a quiet confidence. They had proven to themselves that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could overcome them together. And in that shared certainty, they found not just relief, but hope, joy, and the promise of a future built on trust, courage, and love. The days following the fire were quiet, a welcome relief for the townspeople and for Jake and Alina. Life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm, though the experience had left its mark on everyone. Homes were inspected for damage, fences repaired, and the fields tended once again. The community had come together in ways that reminded Jake of the strength and resilience of people who truly cared for one another. For Jake and Alina, the days were filled with a mix of work, reflection, and shared moments. Their bond had deepened in ways neither could have anticipated. The fire had tested their courage, their patience, and their teamwork, and it had proven that together they could overcome any obstacle. But now, in the calm after the storm, they began to focus on something more tender, the quiet, everyday moments that formed the foundation of love. One morning, Jake took Alina on a ride to the hills where they had spent so many afternoons in the past weeks. The sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and freshly turned earth. As they rode, Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He glanced at Alina, watching the sunlight catch the braid in her hair, and realized how deeply he had come to care for her. Alina, he said gently, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what comes next for us. Alina turned to him, curious and attentive. And what have you decided? Jake took a deep breath. I want to make a life with you, not just today, not just for the moment, but for all the days to come. I want us to face everything together, the good, the hard, and everything in between. Alina smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. Jake, I feel the same way. I've dreamed about this, about building a life with you, about creating new memories together. I never stopped caring for you, and now I can't imagine my life without you. They rode in silence for a while, letting the wind and the open landscape speak for them. There was no need for more words. The trust, love, and understanding they shared said everything they needed. Every glance, every smile, every quiet gesture reinforced the bond that had been forged in childhood, strengthened over years of distance, and proven resilient in the face of danger. Back at the ranch, Jake introduced Alina to the idea of expanding their work together. He wanted her to feel at home in his world, just as she had helped him see the value in hers. They talked about integrating aspects of Apache culture into community events, storytelling evenings, and even educational programs at the local school. Alina's eyes sparkled with excitement. That sounds wonderful, she said. It would give people a chance to learn, to connect with the history of this land, and to understand the traditions that have shaped it. And doing it together, well, that makes it even more special. Jake nodded. Exactly. We can bring the town together in a way that celebrates both our pasts and our futures, and we'll do it side by side. Days turned into weeks, and their life together began to take shape. They spent mornings working at the ranch, afternoons organizing community activities, and evenings sitting by the fire, talking and laughing. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new joys. They discovered that life was not just about grand gestures, but about the small, meaningful moments. The shared smiles over breakfast, the gentle touch of a hand, the quiet conversations under the stars. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Jake and Alina sat on the porch of the ranch house, their feet resting on the railing. The sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and purple, the colors reflecting in their contented eyes. You know, Jake said thoughtfully, I used to think that life was about chasing adventure, about traveling and seeing new places. But now I see that the greatest adventure is here. It's in the people we love, the community we nurture, and the life we build together. Alina leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling softly. I couldn't agree more. The adventure isn't always about distance or excitement. It's about love, commitment, and making every day count. As they watched the stars begin to appear, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the fields around them, Jake realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. A sense of home, not in a place, but in a person. And that person was Alina. The town noticed the change in both of them. The townsfolk admired their dedication, their teamwork, and the quiet love that had grown between them. People often stopped to offer congratulations, share a kind word, or simply smile as Jake and Alina worked together. Their partnership was an inspiration, a reminder that love and community could flourish even after years of separation and challenges. One day, as they were repairing fences along the outer edges of the ranch, Alina paused and looked at Jake thoughtfully. Have you ever thought about the future beyond the ranch? She asked. About what we want for ourselves, for our life together? Jake smiled, brushing his hand against hers. I think about it often. I want a life full of meaning, love, and purpose. I want us to be partners in everything, supporting each other, growing together, and facing whatever comes our way. And most of all, I want to build a family, a home, and a life that we can be proud of. Alina's eyes softened and she squeezed his hand. That sounds perfect. I want the same things, and I'm ready to make it happen with you. As the seasons changed, Jake and Alina continued to strengthen their life together. They planted gardens, cared for the animals, and organized events that brought the town together. Children learned about Apache traditions, families shared stories around campfires, and the community thrived. Through it all, Jake and Alina remained each other's anchor, supporting, encouraging, and loving one another. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake and Alina stood on a hill overlooking the town. The air was cool, and the leaves rustled gently in the wind. Jake took Alina's hands in his and looked into her eyes, feeling the depth of his love and commitment. Alina, he said, his voice steady and full of emotion, we've been given a rare gift. Life brought us together again after so many years, after so much distance, and I don't want to let a single moment slip by. Will you stay with me forever? Alina's eyes filled with tears of joy. Yes, Jake, 1,000 times yes. I want to be with you to build our life together, to share every moment. They embraced, holding each other tightly as the wind whispered through the hills and the first stars appeared overhead. In that embrace, they felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the promise of a future filled with love, trust, and happiness. Over the next months, they began planning a life that honored both their histories and their dreams. Jake continued to manage the ranch with skill and dedication, and Alina continued her work in the community, educating, inspiring, and nurturing the children and families around them. Together, they organized events that blended cowboy traditions with Apache culture, creating celebrations that were unique, meaningful, and joyous. The townspeople embraced these events wholeheartedly. Festivals were held in the town square, featuring storytelling, traditional crafts, horse riding demonstrations, and music. Jake and Alina worked side by side, their partnership evident in every detail. People marveled at how seamlessly they blended their lives and how their love had grown stronger through challenges and experiences. Through it all, Jake and Alina never lost sight of the simple joys. They spent evenings walking along the creek, watching sunsets and talking under the stars. They laughed, teased, and supported each other, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of life and the certainty of their love. One warm summer evening, they sat by the river, skipping stones across the water. Jake watched Alina carefully, admiring the way the sunlight played in her hair and the sparkle in her eyes. You know, he said softly, I used to think that childhood memories were just stories we tell ourselves. But now I see that they're more than that. They shape who we are, guide us, and sometimes even bring us back together with the people who matter most. Alina smiled, tossing a stone across the water. And sometimes they remind us that true love isn't just about the past, it's about the present and the future. It's about choosing each other every day, no matter what comes. Jake took her hand and held it gently. I choose you, Alina, today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come. Alina leaned her head against his shoulder. And I choose you, Jake, always. As the sun set behind the hills, casting a warm glow over the valley, Jake and Alina sat together, content in the knowledge that their journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. The past had brought them together, The challenges had strengthened their bond, and the present offered the promise of a future filled with love, purpose, and happiness. In the quiet of the evening, with the river flowing gently and the stars beginning to twinkle, Jake realized that life had given him something far greater than adventure or success. It had given him love, the kind of love that endured distance, time, and trials. And Alina, standing by his side, understood that she too had found what she had been seeking all along: a partner, a friend, and a true love who would stand with her through every season of life. Their hearts were full, their spirits intertwined, and their souls at peace. Together, they faced the future with hope, courage, and the certainty that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them as one. And so the cowboy and the Apache beauty began a new chapter of their lives, one filled with love, laughter, community, and the joy of sharing every day together.